Hello, my name is Stephanie Moberly. This is my case study for EDL854, the budget debacle. So for this, let's take a look at who all was involved in the situation. First, I have Mr. Santos, the principal of Briardale Elementary. That will be myself in this case study. Mr. Barely, Mr. Morley, and then the Briardale Foundation, as well as the school as a whole. So in this situation, Mr. Barely organized a raffle for cash event as a fundraiser for the Briardale Foundation. On the night of the event, Mr. Barely was taken to the local sheriff's station where he was booked and released. He was later convicted of a misdemeanor and placed on probation. So this is an issue mostly the school principal, so Mr. Santos was embarrassed. Mr. Barely was arrested, and the incident was then published on the front of the local newspaper. So legal or ethical issues that are occurring. So who or has anyone been harmed by the actions or the decisions of another? Physically, there was no harm that took place. Emotionally, the embarrassment that's gone and that's undertaken in this has affected Mr. Barely. He is been charged with a misdemeanor. He's put on probation. Mr. Santos has been embarrassed. And then Briardale Elementary has kind of got a bad rep because this whole incident has been placed on the newspaper. Does this contravene with existing law? So it doesn't specifically lay it out. So here in Kansas, the raffle regulations per the Kansas Department of Revenue is that nonprofits such as schools whose gross raffle receipts exceed $25,000 need to apply for a raffle license. So I'm just making an assumption and assuming that that is the problem for this. So the ethical issues that I found were Mr. Barley's role, so the school principal, should he be held responsible? Right now, it is simply, Mr. Barley, the role is the parent, the president of Briardale Foundation. He's who was charged for this event. So the question I had was, should he be the one that's held solely responsible? Also, what needs to be done with the money collected? So it was intended to be a raffle for cash, but then that was never finished. And then the competition between the schools to raise the most money, I feel like that has kind of driven this and started this whole situation that caused the issue. So as a whole, this kind of summarizes our whole situation. With the hopes of raising the most money in the history of fundraisers at Briardale Elementary, Mr. Barely organized and put on a raffle for cash event only to be surprised with a misdemeanor for his efforts. So again, let's really analyze and take a look into the people, the place, and the program involved in this. Mr. Santos, who is going to be myself for this, is the principal at this elementary school, is very confident in his abilities to run the school and manage the budget. Mr. Barely is the president of the Briardale Foundation, who is putting on this fundraiser. He's a Harvard graduate with lots of new ideas and a thirst for competition. Mr. Morley plays a smaller role within this, but is president of the foundation of another elementary school within the school district. And Mr. Morley and Mr. Barely have passed. So they are extremely competitive, the two of them. Briardale Elementary School serves as a center of a very diverse town. Briardale Elementary is one of 6 elementary schools in the district with a student population of approximately 600. And that is for kindergarten through 5th grade students. Teachers and community members love the school, and resignations or transfers from staff is very limited. The school district's curriculum focuses on basic skills, and the educational instruction objectives at each elementary school are based on student performance that supports an emphasis on basic skills instruction. The funding caused some confusion in past years, creating quite the competition among schools to raise funds for these supplementary curriculum subjects such as art, music, and foreign language. So could this situation be damaging to stakeholders? I have absolutely yes. The school district's reputation has been impacted with the news coverage on the instance. Also, Mr. Barely, who's a Harvard graduate, very well off, very popular, very motivated, now has a misdemeanor and is put on probation. Mr. Santos, the principal himself, was embarrassed and could be held responsible later. Then Briardale Foundation is without leadership and needing funding to support their causes. Who else do I feel like needs to be consulted with this? I think, first of all, you need to inform the superintendent. The school attorney needs to be informed and updated, as well as the school board. Some questions I have before moving further on with this is, was the fundraiser pre-approved? Is that something that needs to be done prior to a fundraiser? Also, what was covered in the orientation provided to Mr. Morley prior to this fundraiser? So I came up with 3 possible options for the situation. First is to do nothing. Let it kind of play out. It's already taken place. It'll blow over eventually. Option 2 is make a public statement, return the money, and then restructure the school foundations. And then the third option was replace Mr. Barely and resign from the position of school principal. So if we analyze these and really evaluate our options, option 1, where you do nothing, is the easiest option, requires no extra work, nothing further required from me as the school principal. The cons, it doesn't solve anything. The same problems are likely to occur in the future. So it's not going to prevent anything from happening in the future. Option 2, make a statement and then restructure, addresses the issue and lets the community members know that the mistake will not happen again. Also, by restructuring the foundations and developing a checks and balances system, better uses for funds raised can be outlined, as well as addressing how to properly conduct fundraisers. A con that I see for this is that it's still embarrassing for the school and for Mr. Santos, as well as Mr. Morley. Option 3 was resign. A pro that I could see from this is that the school and Mr. Morley show that they're accepting the responsibility. I, as a principal, would accept my responsibility for a lack of guidance and resign. Some cons is it doesn't prevent anything from happening in the future. No new training is being developed. There's no new guidelines put forth by the district. Also, there's going to be positions that have to be filled. So there's going to be additional work for the school district, as well as they can still have a bad reputation. So personally, I chose option 2 for the best option. By making a public statement, stakeholders are aware that I'm accepting responsibility, as well as taking the proper steps to prevent something like this from occurring again. I would work with the district administrators and foundation members to restructure the foundations to develop a checks and balances system, as well as provide training on laws, fundraising policies, and district policies. So here it takes a more detailed approach to that option. So my plan of action: first, you need to meet with the superintendent and school attorney to discuss making a public statement, as well as what to say or what not to say while addressing the public. I would then release my public statement apologizing for the lack of guidance on my part and provide them with the information on my plans to provide additional training on laws and guidelines for the fundraising activities. Step 3 is to make attempts to return the money to individuals that purchased raffle tickets. For those that wish to make those purchases a donation, I would provide donation forms for them to fill out. Then inform the superintendent and the school board of plans to restructure the foundation's format, as well as provide training on laws, fundraising policies, and district policies. I'd work with a team of teachers, administrators, and board members to develop those district policies and guidelines regarding fundraising policies and guidelines for the school foundations. Then provide staff and foundation members the training on those newly developed policies and guidelines. And then finally, meet with the foundation committee members to hear their plans for future fundraisers and ideas for supplemental curriculums. That is my case study. Thank you for listening.